So this week we've talked about the mortar that binds the speech together. So what I'd like to do now is just actually perform a speech and show you where I am in each stage, each small aspect of that speech. So I want you to listen for the major structure, where I am in terms of introduction, main point 1, main point 2, or the conclusion, but also listen for, and I'll highlight this, the internal structure, right? Where I am within that point. Am I talking about the evidence, and am I stating the claim, so on and so forth. And don't get too wrapped up in all this, right? I'm going to have a bunch of, you'll see me going through the speech and where I am at each stage. Take it for what it's meant to be, which is a way of thinking about what the audience needs to hear at a given point. So it's not necessarily what I want to say in terms of, I've got this content, I wrote this point, but thinking in terms of what does the audience need to hear or understand at that specific point in the speech. And so this model is trying to get you to think about how you're guiding that audience through the argument and highlighting that argument's congruency, its coherency. And I would say the benefit of this model is it shifts us from thinking about a speech as a series of bits of talk to a number of small thresholds, right? If I'm in that main point, have I talked enough about the claim so that I can move on to getting into the evidence? Once I'm in the evidence, have I talked about the evidence enough so that I've addressed its concreteness? Now I need to start relating it back to the claim. So I'm thinking in terms of what does this specific piece of the speech need to do for the rest of the speech in order to make sense, in order to be clear. So I'm going to go ahead and do the impromptu speech, and you'll see where I feel I am at each one of these points in time. And I'm pretty good at this. I've done it well. I shouldn't say that. I've done this a lot anyway, and I'm pretty good at being able to land a speech at pretty close to a second mark. So I'm going to aim for this to be pretty much 7 minutes on the nose, plus or minus, a second or two. You'll see a counter down here, and you can follow along with where I am in the speech. So I'm now pretty invested in this conversation around MOOCs. I've taught a MOOC, I've taken MOOCs, and initially I have to admit I was a bit skeptical whether or not MOOCs would be available to actually teach a performance skill like public speaking. And I know there are many out there, many academics who would feel the same way, that MOOCs are not a good place or a good platform for teaching performance skills like singing or music or dance or public speaking. I'm now very much a convert. I clearly believe in their capacity. So what I'd like to argue is that yes, MOOCs can teach performance skills. And there's actually a lot that I think could be said under this, but there are two things that I want to focus our attention on. First, MOOCs can allow for efficient instruction of performance skills. But beyond that, MOOCs can allow for productive student practice. So let me tackle this instruction portion first. So MOOCs allow for the effective instruction of performance skills. So, this is pretty important. If you're taking any type of skills class, you want to have good quality instruction that can help you move from being a novice over to being an expert. But I can think of a couple of ways in which this would actually shake out. Well, MOOCs are very good at providing lecture content, and they're actually very good at providing modeling, helping someone see and follow along with an expert. So under lectures, well, MOOCs are video platforms, and so there's all this video lecture content available. And I can think of a specific MOOC, a MOOC on math, teaching math education. Teaching math is difficult anyway, and it's especially difficult if you're trying to get a number of young people interested and involved in math. But there's a MOOC on math education, and those videos are instructing the viewer, giving the viewer all sorts of ideas about activities to run or ways of talking about mathematical concepts. That instruction, that video instruction, is giving that teacher stuff that they can then take and use in a classroom environment to refine their own math education skills. So those video lectures are very efficient at conveying that content. There's certainly no significant difference between a video conveying that content and a lecture hall means for conveying that content. So lectures are pretty useful on a MOOC format for teaching skills. But beyond that, MOOCs are also pretty good for modeling performance skills. So, as we've talked about in this class, and is true in general with performance skills, you want to be able to study with someone who's not only giving you information, but giving you some model to follow. You can analyze what they're doing. So there's currently a MOOC on jazz improvisation. And I can't imagine more of a performance skill than improvisation, musical improvisation. But what's so great about that MOOC is those videos, you can not only learn from the professor, but watch the professor, see how the professor's making decisions about, musical, variation. So that modeling allows someone to study that performance skill. And in fact, having it in a video model actually might work even better because you can really get in there, back it up 2 seconds, go forward 2 seconds, and do a close analysis of that performance skill. So by relying so heavily on video content, MOOCs really do allow for efficient instruction. Now, beyond that, I think MOOCs are really good at allowing for productive student practice. Now, that's tremendously important. Instruction is great. It's important to have good instruction. But getting better at a skill is getting better at a skill and helping students refine their judgment, their abilities. They're moving them from a novice to an expert. So how can MOOCs go about doing this? Well, I think MOOCs can help with practice both through assignments and by structuring private student practice. So first, under assignments. Well, any skills class that you would take, either in person, online, or in a massive open online format, are going to have assignments that you build to. So a skills class has you working on specific itemizable things, building up to a capstone experience, a capstone performance, like a piano recital, and then you refine your skill in that assignment. Well, that's happening right now in many types of skills MOOCs. There's a MOOC on guitar playing from the Berklee School of Music. And what happens there? Same thing that would happen in many other types of guitar classes. You watch the videos, you learn these things, you're getting better and better, but there are capstone assignments where you have to play a guitar piece. You record it and you post it online, so the mechanisms are different, but the structure of that assignment, the structure of that performance skill is very much the same. So, the assignments are tapping into that same basic performance ability. But beyond that, I think MOOCs are pretty good at structuring private student practice. And what I mean by this is, as someone who teaches skills, I know that students are going to spend far more time away from me practicing the skill than they ever will with me. So I want to provide structure and shape to that practice. Here at the University of Washington, we offer a free online dance class where you can analyze dance, learn about the history of dance, and practice movement. Well, that's a way of structuring that practice so you can practice dance at home. And in fact, this might be a real benefit. Certainly in a case like public speaking, there are probably a lot of people who are so apprehensive they'll never sign up for a live in-person class. But they might watch the video, practice at home, get better, and improve their own confidence. So again, both through formal assignments and informal practice, MOOCs are really helping students develop these skills at practicing, helping them do that. So I certainly understand, by my own history, why someone would be skeptical about MOOCs teaching performance skills. But I would say they can. They can provide efficient instruction and productive student practice. I recognize, though, that it's not the same. You don't get the one-on-one coaching or the immediacy of feedback that you would in a live class. But by the same token, you don't get the global reach or providing an educational good for free in a university setting. So they are different, but simply because they're different doesn't mean that MOOCs can't teach performance skills. They can. That's all. Thank you. Good night. No, so what I hope you got out of that is seeing kind of where I am in each one. And that was exactly 7 minutes. Kudos to me for a neat little parlor trick. So that's kind of how I feel myself moving through each component of the speech. And it's not so much a sense of the content that I need to get out, but all these interrelated goals that I have for audience understanding. And I think it's far easier to think in my head, right? Oh, I got to talk about my evidence now, and I need to explain how that evidence relates to the claim. That's a lot easier mentally for me, and it's more tied to where that audience is than trying to think, I'm in line 5 of paragraph 3. So I think this is really one of the benefits of running the impromptu. It gives you a model for organizing your thoughts. So run it a lot, and I think you'll find that all of your talks will probably start improving. So with this discussion of arrangement now out of the way, I kind of want to shift our attention to delivery. And we're going to start in the next lecture with meeting the enemy. Why do we have a fear of public speaking?